recently bought a new vehicle, and I saw, because you sent me an image of yourself wearing a real fancy outfit. Was that a negotiation tactic?
It was. I see when I go to places like that, the dealerships and so forth, if you dress kind of like a rapper or somebody in Hollywood or something, it perks them up, you know? I mean, if we could show people...
So perking them up is a good thing?
Yeah. Well, you know, they understand that you're there and that you have resources. They build a picture in their own mind just based on your appearance. And so I played into it using that.
I'm going to remind Allie to ask me for a photo. I'm going to dig up the photo that you sent me so she can show it here.
It sells it. Yeah. Then people know.
He has a car buying outfit like I've never seen.
Here we go now. What you really want to do? Come here, man. Talk to me. You look like you don't want to give it to us. I know what you're talking about.
All right, I like it. I'll take it.
Honestly, it made me jealous. But then I saw your wife, Allison, in the background as you're walking through the mall afterwards. And I was like, does she love this or is she humiliated? But so it actually had me thinking, because the best deal I've ever gotten on a vehicle in my life is when I couldn't afford what I wanted. And I remember I was in college. I wanted a Dodge Ram. And I was negotiating the price so hard to meet a monthly payment that they had no choice because I was walking out. I didn't have the money.
Right.
So playing the homeless person worked well for me then. You take an opposite tack and have a rapper's jumpsuit or a millionaire's jumpsuit, whatever you want to call it. And I just thought that was fascinating. So
it is. I usually go with the lesser. I go with your strategy, absolutely, 9 times out of 10. And it's kind of like what the guys and gals at the boat show know. The people in T-shirt and flip-flops are the ones with the money. Yeah. And the ones that try and wear all the Gucci stuff and all that. It's a show. So normally that is the technique, is to not show what you may have and so forth. Because that, but in this day it was cold out, and in South Florida I finally had the opportunity to wear that, and yeah, I just played it for.
I give you 10 out of 10 for style points. That's for sure. I don't know if I can pull that off, especially walking through a mall.
Yeah, that was, definitely got some looks of people trying to figure out was I or wasn't I.
You should have walked around filling out job applications like at the kiosk.
That would have been hard.
So, Pat, you are a third-generation Fort Lauderdale native. Not just Florida, Fort Lauderdale native.
Fort Lauderdale.
And so your 2 beautiful daughters, who I saw recently, I saw Sophia at the Italian Festival. She's one of the nicest, most articulate young ladies I think I've ever met. I'm not just saying that because you're here. She's so sweet. But, I mean, that's a sign that she's raised really well by your wife. I don't know.
Yes, my wife does a tremendous job.
Yeah.
I only see her
in
once
spite of being raised in the same household as you, she is phenomenal. But so they would be 4th generation. Do you know any other 4th generation kids or 3rd generation as yourself?
Only one, and offhand, that's actually 5th generation, and it's the people I work with and for the Foreman family, Austin Foreman and Miles Foreman. Miles has been my lifelong best friend, and they're actually 5th generation.
Oh, well, because he has grandchildren, or he would be the 4th generation?
Miles is actually the 4th, and then his children are the 5th.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is incredible. I was kind of disappointed to hear that we weren't the oldest, but they were here. Yeah, one generation before. I actually brought and showed you earlier, but this little newspaper article, advertisement from both of the families. You have my family's real estate and insurance company, and the Foreman's sanitary dairy, which was their original business. They were dairy farmers out in Davie, and there's incredible stories of them delivering milk throughout.
This wouldn't be in compliance today. It doesn't say licensed real estate broker.
No, it doesn't.
I'll have to submit this to the DBP.
You know what's interesting about?
That's so cool.
I guess the history of my family, and going back as far as there were not a lot of things.
Since 1939.
That one's 1939, and they didn't have a board of realtors. They didn't have anything. I think my grandfather was known as a proprietor. That's all he was. He used to be a proprietor of real estate. Awesome. Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't. And as I showed you, also one of his old real estate signs. I mean, there weren't even 9-digit phone numbers. The phone number was 4 digits. That was it.
How nice would that be? I mean, you got to remember that,
right?
I still remember the only phone number I can remember, and it's one of the 10-digit phone numbers with my parents growing up because we always had the same phone number, and I think 2 or 3 of my friends that I used to actually have to call.
Right.
That's it. And my wife's cell phone number.
Right.
I don't know anyone else's cell phone number.
My wife's comes and goes.
Yeah,
right. What is it? Yeah, but no, we didn't.
So this is the sale by McTigue. Is this circa
1930s as well, yeah.
That's incredible. That is so cool. So did you, I mean, obviously you've followed then in your grandfather's footsteps. Is that something that you naturally evolved into, something you wanted to do from a young age?
So I think, again, being immersed in it from a young age, just naturally, when parents involve their children in what they do and in that lifestyle and so forth. So yes, much like my father, who was driven around in a car by his father, and they would go out and look at things. And I mean, keep in mind, 441 was out west. I mean, west. My dad used to hunt on lunch break. He would leave downtown Fort Lauderdale, drive 10 minutes west, and start hunting.
You hunt on lunch break, don't you?
I do, but it
On
depends.
animal.
I'm a different type of animal. So, yeah, and so they go around, and there were no seatbelts, so my dad would tell stories of, they'd be driving, and then they'd have to stop abruptly, and my grandfather just put his arm out and hold my dad against the front seat, and then continue on. So, yeah, we've been looking at real estate and just involved in it, and so I had a normal affinity and really enjoyed it, and so it's where I went into. I didn't start in it when I first got out of college. I went to work for a Fortune 500 company and stuff. Started at the bottom and had worked my way up. And then just around the 2008 crash or whatever, decided just before that was looking for a new job and stuff. So then I happened to start real estate right when it was going in the tank.
Very cool. I also, my dad was in different real estate investments when we were growing up, and we would drive around and look at properties. And there was actually a conversation I was having with you, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, that reminded me when you and I can talk, we can underwrite a deal just on the phone while we're driving.
Right.
And that's, you can tell you're passionate about it, because I am too. I mean, even when Liz and I just go and travel, I love looking at real estate. I either pull up, the local MLS or Realtor.com, Zillow, whatever I can look at. I'm like, I just want to check values and underwrite deals. So, I mean, you went into it, you've done over $100 million in sales, right?
Yep.
You work pretty much independently. You're not with a large firm, so you're out there. You do residential, commercial, a little bit of everything, right?
Correct. Yeah, I work with the Foreman family with American Marketing and Management, with Austin's company, and I mainly handle their residential stuff. Whether we buy and flip, we buy and then fix it up, resell it, or we do new construction, and or just deals that are my friends and family or within his network of friends and family as well. So I really work for their family underneath their umbrella and so forth.
Very cool. And what are you seeing in the market right now? You're pretty. I mean, you do deals all over the place, but for the sake of conversation, to keep it hyper local for Fort Lauderdale, since you're so involved there and you're third generation, what are you seeing in that marketplace now? Is anything changing? We've had plenty of conversations in the past with other people that the market's been sideways.
Yeah.
That's been across, pretty much all types of real estate, whether it's multifamily, commercial, residential. Are you seeing any type of pickup? What are you seeing out there now?
It seems to be. I mean, I think we went through the election kind of lull where everybody's waiting to see what happens and this stuff. And then the holidays as well can be a little bit of a cooling off period. So I think we're coming through that. I've had activity right now across the board. I've got deals coming in on retail leases, on industrial sales, and even the residential. So it was running sideways there for a while, but I think we're seeing a bit of an uptick.
Yeah.
Inventory's building a bit in
So
the
you think that's
residential.
just pent up demand? People waiting on the election, like you said, and the holiday lull. We've also, your location, noticed, a decent amount of uptick. Nothing that seems like there's a major stimulant to the market, which is probably good.
Right.
I'd rather see a nice, healthy return to a normalized market.
That's how I see it. It looks like that. It's definitely not like a big spike or anything dramatic. It just looks like, yes, maybe some of the pent-up buyers, they wanted to make sure we didn't fall off some kind of cliff in January or whatever. And yeah, they're like, okay, we need to buy a home, and so things are moving forward again. And yes, I think I agree with you. I think we need healthy, kind of moderate, slow growth, not any kind of drastic. Again, we've had so much gain in the value of real estate, as we all know, in the last 3 years or so, that a little bit of a moderation with slow growth is healthy and should. If it keeps running away, it would be a problem.
Absolutely. So what do you focus on now? A little bit of everything?
Yeah, I like, being a little bit and doing it all. Again, got some good commercial leases that we're working on. Like I said, an industrial sale, and always looking for opportunities, things to buy, and again, either flip or land that we can build a new home on, a nice spec home. We try and focus east of Federal Highway and so forth on the water.
Are there any major lessons you've learned? You mentioned the 2008 crash. I too was in real estate and worked through that. Having been through that 2008 to 2011 period, and then now pretty much what I would say July of 2022 until now, did you see any similarities, or what lessons would you glean from for people getting into the business or newer agents looking to begin a career in real estate?
I think it's obviously learn the market and then know what your comfort level is, what you can afford to borrow, and therefore what you can afford to buy, and then try and focus on that price range. If you get ahead of your skis, you want to be able to sleep at night. Real estate is not like a stock where you can just wake up and sell it the next day. It has things that go wrong. Roofs have leaks, refrigerators go bad. So you can't buy something that taps you out. You need to buy something where you have flexibility and room to maybe do some upgrades, or when the unforeseen happens, you can afford to carry it and go through that time period.
Have you found yourself, so speaking through the lens of an investor, have you found yourself looking at deals? It's been challenging to find deals. And I mean, even when I was just working with some institutional buyers out there, it was fascinating to hear that they've had this exact same sentiment that I have, just looking for smaller level transactions that you or I may go out and invest in ourselves or with friends or whoever. It's just nothing really made sense because you have to adjust to the new normal, right? You mentioned that period of the inflammatory prices and all the values doubling since COVID, insurance prices going crazy, taxes readjusting on these properties. It made underwriting on these deals a real art, and you had to leave a little bit more of a safety net, at least I have, and it kind of kept me on the sidelines, right? And now I'm wondering, 10 years from now, am I going to say, why didn't I just go out and buy? Because I know that's what I think about the 2010 era, and I'm glad I bought some stuff then, but of course hindsight's 2020.
Sure.
Do you feel like we're in one of those periods right now?
Yeah, I think we again came up or through the cooling off period. We all know, that COVID, because of the migration that took place, because of all the money that was printed, unlike anything any of us have ever seen, and it did push the prices up almost 50%, which again is unbelievable in a 4-year span.
Unbelievable.
Then you mentioned,
what do we pump it at $7 trillion or something in a short amount of time?
It's still sloshing around.
Yeah.
That's
maybe not for long.
Yeah, hopefully they need to. It'd be nice to be able to sap some of the money out of that in a healthy way, so that we don't. Because normally you need, or it's healthy to have and I'm not hoping for it, but a recession or something to get rid of inflation. You need the destruction of money.
Yeah.
So if they're able to reduce some of the things they're doing, government programs, government waste, that will dry up some of the money in circulation, and in the best way, maybe. We haven't even seen that in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Actually cutting substantial.
It was interesting to run a parallel, since it's relevant right now, what DOGE is doing in the federal government. It's causing a lot of panic. People saying you can't just fire, you can't cut everything,
Right.
I remember there was a time in my business where we were entering a slowdown period, and we were so inflamed, in every area. But specifically, when I was going through line items on our credit card, I realized it had almost tripled in about 18 months, and we couldn't decide on anything other than maybe $100 here or $50 on things to cut. And I said, it's not sustainable, it's not possible. So I turned the credit card off. And people on my staff were going, what are you going to do? These vendors are going to call. I said, let them call. I'm sorry, we're going to experience a little bit of pain. I'm not saying I'm not going to pay them, but this will make us assess what we need versus what one person thinks we need or want, or vice versa. We're going to cut everything off and go by committee on what is absolutely needed. And that was the only way, and it worked. So I'm kind of wondering, I drew a parallel there to the recent approach in spending. It is really hard once you've grown anything to shrink it.
Right. So, it appears you use the same strategy as maybe Mr. Musk is using.
I think they're using my strategy.
They may have been tapped into your
I probably
system.
shouldn't be taking credit for it, but I'm pretty sure he's been watching.
So it's you did the same thing, which is a very smart way to do it, and it brings all the items up to the front. They boil up to the top, and then you can evaluate what's necessary and what's not. Many of the stories we're hearing right now of, I guess they've found about $55 billion, which is a pretty big number, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
But it's...
You want to do your Trump voice so bad, right?
Biting my thumb. Trying not to get ahead of myself. But it's... What are they gonna say? It's you got me in.
Just give it. Now you gotta get it out there. Now you gotta go.
Elon's tremendous. He's one of the smartest men in the world. But so I lost my train of thought as far as where we were with the money saving and all.
How do you think that would impact?
Okay, what we were saying, like about so government. I mean, and it's wild to watch some of the people squirm because it's as if every job there and every dollar spent is justified, and it's. If we're being told and what we're seeing is true, some of this stuff is absolutely egregious.
It's
absolutely,
insane. Even going back
on the American people.
Even going back to a business perspective, it is impossible once you've reached a certain size, and it's not that big, to trace every single dollar.
Correct.
There is so much waste in every small business. Imagine the size of the federal government.
100%.
So I agree with you. It just seems weird. You're going to see a lot of crazy stuff, but once. If we ever have the ability to balance the budget again, how do you see that impacting the real estate environment? You think it's going to help stabilize things? You think it's going to have any impact on it? I mean,
that depends how that affects interest rates and so forth. I think just monetary stability in the country is important, more important than maybe our individual real estate prices and all. I mean, they're what is our anchor, our country. If our government goes broke or continues to run these deficits, then we will have tremendous problems. Yes, in real estate it'll go up, but our lifestyles and the economy with which we operate in will start to deteriorate and fall apart.
Yeah.
As right now you see it with the hotbed of South Florida and the real estate prices, right? The people that aren't millionaires or whatever can't afford $1 million house are finding it hard to find a house. Well, those are the people that really make everything work, right? They're all the ones doing all the jobs that really make the city and the environment function. So if they can't afford to live here and are being pushed further and further away, that will hurt real estate prices and hurt the overall quality of life for the people that live in certain areas. And there are these type of areas throughout the country. California struggles with it, New York struggles, all the big cities where we have this growth and concentration of wealth. It has an effect of pushing people out. Yeah. So that needs to be considered. But, having a good balance sheet and a clean balance sheet and starting to pay down this $36 trillion in debt,
it's only a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, historically speaking, that wasn't a controversial idea.
It shouldn't be.
Never was.
No. And it's, my point also was that if our government is financially strong, then that allows us to have strength and operate within it. If they're falling apart.
And it's always provided such a safe haven or an opportunity for people to invest from outside of this country into this country, right? So by having this ability would only increase that.
That's part of why we have such great success is because we are, a terrific republic or democracy with which.
Safe, transparent.
Absolutely. The best, country in the world at it. And we need to repolish ourselves and get back to glistening across a lot of different areas because we've gotten a little tarnished and we've lost a little bit of that luster. So hopefully we all work together to bring that back.
A couple things, I don't want to segue away too fast, but a couple things before we end up running out of time that I wanted to touch on. You work for a local family office. I think my stats could be a little off now. I know there's been a fair amount of consolidation amongst realtors nationwide the last couple of years. There always is with the market shifts. But for realtors who are out there working for small independent offices or sole practitioners, which used to be 80%, I think it's still high 70s or close to 80% of the realtors across this country. How do you compete when you're out there working for a buyer or working for a listing against the larger companies that tend to have more market share? And have you faced that objection when you go on a listing appointment, so to speak? How have you overcome it? Have you ever lost a deal to it? Tell me how it is working for a small family office.
Yeah, all of the above. It is hard to compete with the bigger companies, right? Because in many ways they either have more resources, they have other programs, they have technology, they have staff, you got a number of agents, and there's a lot of benefit to that. The way I've come about it is, I'm more of a boutique. I mean, I'm white glove. When you deal with me. When I have a listing, I go to
Can you do that in Russian voice, please?
I can do in the Russian voice. When I have listing, you have me. You do not have somebody I pull off street and put in.
Have you ever used your accent to land a deal?
Oh, yeah, that's done that a couple of times. Yeah, but my thing is I don't know why, but yeah, my ear, I tend to mimic. So if I have a Hispanic client, I start to speak with a Spanish
Let's hear it.
tongue. You don't want to be talking to me, man. I'm telling you, this is the most beautiful house in all of Fort Lauderdale.
What about in Espanol?
En español, sí, yo puedo comprar una casita para tu familia, está muy bueno, tiene una piscina grande en la yarda de atrás. So, yeah, no, and that's how I massage my clients.
Yeah.
I'm very personable.
You're not getting that with your typical location or compass agent. There's no way.
They cannot morph. No. They walk the line. They carry the corporate ladder. No, with me, yeah, it's all fluid.
Yeah. So I was just curious if you had one tip for someone starting out or someone who's working for a small family office. How do you, so you mentioned white glove service. Is that what you say? Make sure that you're honing in on your ability to provide a unique one-on-one service, or is that the best value prop?
Yeah, that's one.
Even for companies my size, let's say,
Yep.
Which are bigger, but there's still people out there that haven't heard of us.
Yeah.
They've heard of whoever is saturating their market.
True.
Which could be any number of other brands, and they'll say, location, whose location? Why should I work with you?
Right.
And we've always told people that the vast majority of people work based on a relationship, not a specific brand. There is not a brand I'm aware of that's going to sell a property for someone. Right. Of course, resources help, exposure, but so much of it comes down to pricing the property appropriately, making sure it's accessible, reaching out to your local networks and everything else.
Yep.
So.
Yes, no, I think the pricing, if you really want to sell, the pricing is important. And there's a right line there that is the best number for the person selling and so forth, and that's fair to the market. Overpricing is never a healthy thing to do. You become the old proverbial falling knife.
Right.
And I've seen it time and time again with people. And again, they're the owner of the property. At the end of the day, we do it how they want, but then some of them have had to come to Jesus and say, geez, that really did go that way, didn't it?
Yeah.
Said, yeah.
So setting yourself apart, so to anyone listening right now who has had a hard time overcoming that objection, they better get really good at selling themselves.
Yeah,
right?
sell yourself. And of course, probably the most important thing is your knowledge of the market. Because again, there's only so much AI and so forth. That's pulling numbers and those type things. But if you know grassroots, boots on the ground, facts about an area, special knowledge and so forth, that's going to add value to.
I agree 100%. In fact, anyone that starts in a business, ask me, what's the number one thing they should be doing? I always say, aside from learning your contracts, going to every association or training, that's all stuff you're just supposed to do. What you should be doing is understanding your inventory. 100%. Like the back of your hand, you should go into every single open house. You should be looking at anything and everything that's closed. And within 2 or 3 months, you will have toured those homes and then they're closed. Mm-hmm. So when you go and you meet with someone in that specific market and they're asking you about their home value, you have very precise explanations for why a specific home may have closed for a little more, a little less, based on the view, the horrible smell, whatever. Yep. Have that real hyper-local knowledge. I think it's important.
Absolutely. It's the most important. And again, you understand the finish.
And to be able to morph into a character on demand.
Yes. It's funny, but yeah. So understanding again finishes of the house. Then you understand about different contractors and the quality that they build, and positioning of the home down the intercoastal or things like that. That special firsthand knowledge is invaluable and gives you a head above others in technology.
Absolutely. Getting back to Fort Lauderdale, insurance has been a problem. We were talking about floods a little bit before this pod started. What is going on with insurance? I saw recently, I think was it 17 or 18 new smaller insurance companies are being introduced over the next 12, 24 months into our market. That should help. But tell me a little bit, like in terms of Fort Lauderdale, I know there's been a lot of discussion about flood maps, the reorganization of flood maps, and insurance. Is that coming up a lot in your conversations on listings or working with buyers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a concern more for buyers as they're the ones stepping into it. It is a major headwind or focal, focus that people have when they're buying a home. It's one of the big line items on what they're doing. And it has been tricky. It seems the governor and the legislature are starting to try and work towards some resolutions and so forth about how to address it. I'm glad to hear what you just said, that there may be more agencies moving in.
Yeah, did you hear about that yet?
I didn't hear that.
I read about it maybe just a week ago. I've been meaning to do more research on it, but there was a big announcement about 2 companies that have already entered the market. Of course, they go really slow because they're not federally backed or backed by the state yet, so they have to proceed with caution. They don't have the capital to outlay like some or the reserves that they need for some of these big companies, but they're starting to move into select markets, and there's I think 17 or 18 more that'll be moving in. So
that's great. Yeah, I mean, the more we can get in. An idea I had, I don't know if it holds water, but no pun intended. But it's like, I don't know why we don't look at trying to do this on a nationwide level, like we have nationwide flood. If you spread the risk of our hurricanes in with the Midwest tornadoes, in with the West California's fires, and then you blend it across the United States.
Tornadoes.
Yeah, all major storm events, and we blend it nationwide. It would be interesting to me, just like the flood policies, relatively, it's creeping up, but it's relatively affordable compared to wind policies.
Right. I mean, we've touched on that before, and you could do it in such a way where when you're in a lower risk environment, it's down, or based on the value of the home. So the last thing that someone in Oklahoma wants is to be paying for everyone, but Oklahoma gets tornadoes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
I think a lot of people just, this year experienced snowstorm or ice storms, and that creates, flood risk with their pipes freezing or what have you, different damage. So
yeah, we saw some global flooding as well in the Midwest, and
right.
The California wildfire was unbelievable.
How crazy is that? I mean, we've all seen the State Farm canceled several of the people, so the state stepped in. I guess the state insurance only covered up to $3 million, which is a lot of money. And most people say boo-hoo, but nowadays $3 million, yes, that's a very luxurious home.
Sure.
But in California, in the Palisades where they had the worst of the fires,
there was a lot of that.
I think that's below the average price. And if someone retired and bought a $5 million house, in that period and decided to go uninsured, I guess it's a risk they're willing to take, but they didn't have the coverage there. So
we're dropped as well, in my understanding. Just a couple months before that, a few of those insurance agencies cleared their books and dropped some people, so that was unfortunate to be in limbo.
The thing I hate to see in the Florida market is people have lived here forever, so they own their home, outright without a mortgage, so they have the ability to decide what insurance levels they want. And, there's just so many people that have been retired, they've been in their home forever. They can't afford insurance. When they bought their house, insurance was probably $300, and now they're getting bills for $15,000 or $18,000, so they're opting out of it. Puts people at a horrible risk. So I agree, there should be some type of federal program that could step in it. You wouldn't think it'd be hard to do.
No, or even the state. I know that they back citizens and so forth, but what if we started, I don't know whether it's a bond or something, but to me, there's nothing more that important than the state backing its citizens, its residents, its business owners.
Right.
If they get damaged, the state doesn't get taxes. The state, doesn't benefit our tourism and so forth. So if the state was able to put in some mechanism by which they have money to back the insurers or be a fail-safe, again, at a higher level, I think, again, there's nowhere better their money could be spent to putting us back in our homes and back in our businesses and back in work.
100%. You look at what happens now. Anytime there's a storm hits, the people go, I want to go find a deal. There's money flowing into that environment. And it normally helps, the rising tide floats all boats when it comes to that. But
after the storm, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, some of that, too, though, is they will consume the people that live there that are falling on the hardship of not having insurance or not being able to afford to rebuild, so the speculator or the investor comes in, buys them out, and then some of them may be relieved because they're just more than they want to do to build back, but others end up getting pushed out by that. So there's, I'd like to see that the state or some mechanism tries to put the original people, if they want, back in their home, back to, what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then if not, yes, it's nice to have people that come in and say, look, we'll take the burden, here's some money, and you can just, move somewhere else that already has an existing home or whatever.
Right. With storms appearing to become more prevalent, it could be cyclical, whatever, doesn't matter. Right. I know a lot of people are saying there's no end in sight. So insurance, I don't see it that way. I mean, floodwaters cause a lot of damage. That's what it normally comes. But another thing that happens every time an area is hit by a bad storm, it's built back to code or stronger than it was. I mean, you still have a lot of areas in Florida that are built pre-hurricane code, right?
Sure.
And so, like an example, my house in the Keys was built after the first hurricane code in the 80s.
Okay.
In Monroe County. I don't even think some of the places adopted hurricane code up here until the 90s.
Right. No, yeah, the Andrew.
Yeah, right. Until after Andrew. But
yeah.
the Keys, I think, did in the 80s, mid-80s or something. Because mine was built in 88, and it was done on stilts to the initial hurricane code.
Right.
We don't sustain hardly any damage there from any storm. I mean, we had a Cat 3. There just wasn't much. So my point in that is when things are built to the newer code, there's a lot less damage. So I'm thinking that, not that we want more storms, but I think that as the storms may continue to get worse, I don't know. I think that impact could potentially be less and less.
I see what you're saying, and yes, I think that as things are rebuilt and built to code, they will sustain these storms better, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's another thing when we were just briefly talking about this insurance, I think that part of what we could look at maybe, or I don't know why they don't, is having sort of a graduating scale. If you live on the barrier island right next to the ocean, or in a waterfront home right off the intercoastal, you're going to pay a bit more of a premium because you're closer to where the storm will hit. You're closer to the storm surge. And, I would think that we could, they want to sell you insurance to pay for your whole house if it was wiped off the slab, which is, why does that matter in plantation?
Right.
Is the house going to be blown? Even in, whatever, Fort Lauderdale downtown or whatever, I mean, it's not right on the coast. Point being, if my mortgage is $500,000, why do I have to insure my home to the rebuild of $1 million?
Right.
Why, as long as my mortgage broker or my lender gets paid back.
Right. Insurance my loan amount.
Correct.
Or wherever
insure my loan amount, maybe a little extra. Or the people, like you're saying, that don't want to insure at all because of the cost. What if they could just buy $250,000 in insurance?
That's a good question.
That goes a long way.
The lender doesn't give a shit as long as
they
they're
get
paid
their
back,
money. And
right?
Absolutely.
So who's making that decision, do you think, that it has to go? It's a deal between the lenders. You're giving me that smile.
It's
in Irish voice.
Oh, it's a beautiful question. I don't know where it comes from, really. I don't know whose desk it's stuck on. But, why is it? Why is it we can't just pay for the mortgage and then maybe a little extra juice if we've got a problem? Roof blows off. What's a roof cost? $100,000. Well, I've got to have $1.5 million on me ledger. So, I mean, there's some questions. Where are the deals? There's deals here. Come on. Somebody's got to be putting these deals together.
You make me laugh. That's good. You have another paper over there. What's that one?
This one's just another listing that my grandfather had. This one dates back to 1937, a long time ago. So that is, you can see. This is actually our
for sale sign.
Yep.
100 feet on the New River. $6,500. That's incredible.
That's like the cost of a golf cart now or something.
Yeah.
Like a 4-seater.
Like a 2-seater.
2-seater.
Yeah,
2-seat golf cart. You could have had. Yeah, right on the intercoastal, 100-foot.
This plot has 100 feet of frontage in beautiful New River and on beautiful New River, and is 200 feet deep. That's a huge lot. Situated between Needham and Curtis. That's incredible. So what would that cost today, Pat?
100 feet, New River. Again, depending where on the river.
That's a 20,000 foot lot.
That's lot. So we're talking $8 million, maybe.
Woo!
I mean, that's pinned between other lots and stuff, not its own point or anything.
Talking about inflation.
That's $8 million.
So that was what, 87 years ago. Is my math wrong?
We are. Yeah, this is our 100th year in Fort Lauderdale. Actually, this is our anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, my grandfather came in 1925
from
Iowa.
So what's the Iowa accent?
That's a good question. I haven't been there yet. I don't know.
Can you listeners out there imagine if this was your friend and when he phone calls or when the phone rings, you have no idea who's going to be talking to you on the other line? Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
This was awesome.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you very much. Fun running with the bulls.